Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. Hope you enjoyed the Smack Off, a tradition unlike any other, and really it makes you feel like the good old days of sports talk radio, right? Good job by everyone there with the Jim Rome Show on putting on another extremely entertaining Smack Off. And now we move forward. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, but we don't have much time. So let's get to it. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to chime in. The other big event of the day I am watching as we speak, as the Colorado Avalanche are playing the Vegas Golden Knights. Early start for that one, not because of Halloween, but because it's Nevada Day, which apparently that means you play an afternoon hockey game. I'm not familiar with the customs. It is all Avs right now. They're just underway in the third period. Avs leading 2-0. And I look at Valeri Nichushkin and Jack Eichel getting into it a little bit, having some talk. Avs up 2-0, but now Vegas is on a 5-on-3 power play. The Avs power play or penalty kill today has been terrific. They've been smothering Vegas. The two goals scored by Marty Necas. Wouldn't you know it? The day after the first game, the first period after Marty Necas signs that 8-year extension, he scores the first goal of the game on a terrific cross-ice feed from Cale Makar, just goalie not fast enough to get from one post to the next, especially with that wicked wrist shot that Marty Necas has. And then Brock Nelson on a breakaway made it 2-0 for Nelson, starting to get a little bit going. I talked about this second line and how important it is to the Avs' success this season. There was talk a couple of weeks ago about moving Marty Necas down. I never liked that kind of stuff when they talked about Mikko Rantanen. I know the Western Conference Finals, the year they won the Stanley Cup, they moved Mikko down to the second line to center it, right? Because Nazem Kadri was out. I understood that because you need someone to play center. But let's just let the second line stand on their own. And I've always been a proponent of that whenever this has come up in the years after the Avs won the Stanley Cup, when they lost Nazem Kadri. Clearly that second line didn't pack as much punch. And then in Gabriel Landeskog being out as well, obviously. Just make your best line, and eventually you got to figure out a way to make that second line hold up. And you're starting to see it a little bit. Brock Nelson has put away a couple of goals. Valeri Nichushkin has been really good. Gabriel Landeskog still searching, still hunting for that first regular season goal in 3 seasons. But starting to get going. That's the force multiplier line here. That's the line that will ultimately take the Avs from one of the Stanley Cup contenders in the West to maybe the contender for the Stanley Cup in the West. And certainly the team they're playing today is on that list as well. So this is a bit of a showcase game for the Avs. Vegas just picked up a penalty, so now they're on a 4-on-3 for a little less than a minute. So Vegas killing their own power play. 17:27 left in the third. Avs leading the Vegas Golden Knights 2-0. You know, it's when you're the Avs or when you're the Nuggets, when you're at their station, when you're a contender, there aren't a ton of games that you look at it and go, oh, that's a really interesting one. You're just looking for the Avs and the Nuggets to rack up wins. This is one of those for the Avs. Coming up, they'll play Edmonton, I think, in just a couple of weeks. That's another one of those. You saw one across the conference with Carolina the other night. There are only a handful of teams that you look and say, okay, what do the Avs do against this team, as Tomas Hertl has just cut the deficit in half for Vegas, beating Scott Wedgwood to make it 2-1. I think they'll play 4-on-4 now for a little bit before the Avs have a very short power play. Avs have only had one power play today, did not score on it. So already back to regular schedule programming. Avs power play can't do anything. So 2-1 Avs. But this is one of those teams in Vegas that you're kind of measuring the Avs against. And Jack Eichel has played at an MVP level. They add Mitch Marner. Not at all concerned if I'm a Vegas fan, even with Mark Stone out and Alex Pietrangelo out for the year as well. Not worried about Vegas and their skaters. Worried about, if I'm a Vegas fan, I'm a little bit worried about their ability to keep pucks out of the back of the net against a team like the Avs. And already you've seen it. One was just a great play with Makar to Necas. You see almost every goalie in the league give up a goal like that. Second one, though, was a defensive breakdown. Brock Nelson got in behind everybody and scored on a breakaway. That's maybe the differentiator between the Avs and the Golden Knights. Scott Wedgwood in goal today has been very good to that point. Just gave up the power play goal. Mackenzie Blackwood was speaking to the media yesterday. Could he be nearing a return? I almost thought that we would see Blackwood today. But alas, it's Wedgwood for at least one more game. I think when I look at these two teams, star power, McKinnon, Eichel, but the difference is the Avs on the blue line and the Avs in goal, I think, are better than Vegas. And that's bearing itself out so far in this one, as the 4-on-4 has a little less than 30 seconds left in it. Avs now clinging to a 2-1 lead as they gave Vegas a 5-on-3 power play. So we'll keep you updated on how the Avs fare. Tonight, the Nuggets, for those who observe, are playing in the NBA Cup against the Portland Trailblazers. And then we got Air Force hockey tonight as well. I'll be on the call alongside Jay Ritchie for that one. 7:05 puck drop here on Extra Sports 1300. Don't need to spend a ton of time on the football game last night. Just kind of went how I thought it would go. You know, everyone bearing the Baltimore Ravens. Spend a few weeks without Lamar. He comes back, and you see what they can do. And you see what Miami is. So the pressure is now on Pittsburgh. They had this window here where even if they get, I mean, the Cincinnati game is the one I'm going to keep going back to. The Green Bay game, Green Bay is a good team. That happens. But you don't get that win against Cincinnati. And you keep Cincinnati in the conversation as well by losing that game. And now you're 2 games up. Here comes Lamar. You look at the schedule for Baltimore and you go, oh, man, they might be able to get a few wins here. And last night wasn't even a contest. But the Miami Dolphins today have made a move, and it's an interesting one. And I think it may have relevance to you if you're a Broncos fan. The team has mutually agreed, whatever that I mean, I know what it means, but I don't ever believe teams when they say this. But the official word out of Miami is that the organization and their GM, Chris Greer, not to be confused with his brother, who's the general manager of the San Jose Sharks, have agreed to part ways. And there are some reports floating around that the reason why, because if you're talking about an in-season change, you would think it'd be Mike McDaniel. There's some reports out there that the reason why it's Chris Greer who's going and not McDaniel for now is because Greer wasn't willing to deal Jalen Waddle at next week's trade deadline. Now, that seems like a very specific reason for firing your general manager. So we'll see if it really is centered around Jalen Waddle. But when you make an in-season general manager change, the questions become, is there a fire sale coming? Are the Miami Dolphins going to be looking to unload players? It's going to take a lot to get Jalen Waddle from Miami. You know, everyone pronounces these teams dead, and then they want to pick apart the carcass here and take all their players. It's like, well, Miami, they might be rebooting here, but they're going to still need some players to build around. So I don't know if the reports that are out there, and it's a report, I should say, that this is all Jalen Waddle related, and now that Chris Greer's gone, Jalen Waddle is going to be on the open market. I'm sure they'll listen, but I'm sure they're going to want a king's ransom, because what NFL team, including the Denver Broncos, wouldn't love to add Jalen Waddle to the mix? So certainly it opens up Miami for business, as they clearly look like they are heading for a top to bottom. Unfortunately for Dolphins fans, not very top to bottom. Stephen Ross will still be there. But in everybody underneath him on the organizational flow chart, they're going to reset this thing. Mike McDaniel's going to be gone. Tua is not going to be the quarterback of this team moving forward. So they're going to be listening. And just to tie it to the Denver Broncos, of course, they should be calling and seeing what they can trade for Jalen Waddle. Of course they should. Is that the player that I think Miami's going to deal? I don't. I think you're looking at former Bronco Bradley Chubb. I think you're looking at expiring contracts of other players, kind of nibbling around the edges a little bit. Not a complete. When in the NFL do we ever have a real fire sale? Right? The NFL trade deadline is not like any other league. And I mean that to say that it's never as fun. There's never as much going on at the NFL trade deadline as we think there will be. I don't expect Miami to trade everybody. But if there's another player along with, Tennessee, Cincinnati, do they really believe that they have something to play for? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Or are they going to look to move a Trey Hendrickson? But it's another team in the mix that is putting out the for sale sign. And the Broncos would be wise with where they are at right now, 6-2, top of the division. They would be wise to start making some calls and see if they can fortify some spot on their roster. But Jalen Waddle feels a little bit pie in the sky. Because if I'm Miami and I'm going to reset with a new quarterback, if I'm going to dip into this draft, and who's the guy in this draft, by the way? We haven't had that conversation for a while. Not Aller, maybe still Aller, depending on how long he's going to be out. But Arch, that conversation has changed a lot. But Miami, I would imagine, is going to be in the quarterback business. It would be a nice player to have Jalen Waddle with that new quarterback. But clearly Miami's saying, we're done here. We're resetting. Not everything must go, but hey, make us an offer. And the Denver Broncos should be one of those teams dialing up the Miami area code. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, we talk Broncos Texans with Sean Pendergast, who hosts a show on the Texans flagship. Just how real is this recent uptick for the Houston Texans? I'll ask Sean next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Texans and Broncos on Sunday. Joining me now is a man that knows the Broncos opponent better than anyone. He is an outstanding host on Sports Radio 610 in Houston, and you've heard him on this station quite a bit over the years, hosting national shows for CBS, Infinity, all that good stuff, taking some time out of his Halloween festivities. He is Sean Pendergast. Sean, pleasure to have you.
It's good to be on, man. I'm taking, as I mentioned before we went on the air, we just got to my in-laws' house, and my in-laws, they are one of those families that goes, like balls to the wall on Halloween. So they turn their garage into a haunted house. So I just try to contribute. You gotta toughen these kids up in the neighborhood, and you got to scare them a little bit on Halloween.
That's right. So what are we going with as far as the mask to scare the youths of Houston?
My face is enough. I'm a bald guy, and I think between my face and the bald head, if it's dark enough out, that's enough to scare them. So I'm good. I don't need to costume up.
All right, sounds good. Best of luck with that.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the Texans. What's different over the last, let's call it, month?
Yeah, well, they've started winning for once,
right.
So they've won 3. Yeah, they've won 3 out of 4. The first 3 weeks were tough because it was all close games. It was all games where the Texans were in position to win the games at the end, and a couple of games against the Rams and the Jags, they had bad turnovers in the last couple of minutes, and then against the Bucs on Monday Night Football, they had a chance to seal the game if they just pinned Baker Mayfield in the pocket on a 4th down play, and he managed to escape and scramble and go score a game-winning touchdown. So that was frustrating because once they won a couple games to get to 2 and 3, they were actually 4th in the league in point differential after being 2 and 3 because they'd lost 3 close games and won 2 blowouts. So they've been playing better football. The offensive line seems to be gelling a little bit. If I'm being honest, I mean, they've gotten some pretty good injury luck with a couple of their opponents. Baltimore, that game, there was no Lamar Jackson, and their defense was banged up. And then the San Francisco team that they played on Sunday was missing Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and some other guys as well. So they've managed to catch some good injury luck, but they've taken advantage of it, and they've played well offensively. And the big thing in the Niner game that I think everybody here is hoping carries over is that C.J. Stroud looked in complete control against the 49ers. A lot of short passing, a lot of getting the ball out quick, which is going to be essential against Denver with that pass rush. He's going to have to get the ball out quick. They're going to be playing, I would imagine, a lot of kind of jumbo line. They played a lot of 6 offensive lineman stuff against the Niners. So I'd imagine that's going to be in full effect against what is one of, if not the best pass rushes in the league.
It seems like I was just talking about this earlier this week because I think both quarterbacks, it would behoove them to get rid of the ball quickly given the opposing defenses. It looks like C.J. Stroud, it's just one metric, but it looks like the time it's taking him to release the football is closer to the number it was in his rookie year where he took the league by storm as opposed to last year. When you look at C.J. Stroud and what he is this year, do you think that maybe decisiveness, getting rid of the football, is a reason why maybe he's starting to look like the 2023 version of himself?
Definitely. And I think he's, part of it, the reason it's gotten better lately too, is a new offense. Nick Caley, they fired, the Texans fired Bobby Slowick after the season last year and brought in Nick Caley, who put in an entirely new system. And the system dictates that C.J. Stroud gets to come to the line and change the protections, change the play. He didn't have nearly as much control over the offense with Bobby Slowick as he does with Nick Caley. And that's a work in progress. CJ hadn't been used to that. So I think that's part of it. He's been somewhat reluctant to, it seems like, do what CJ calls the death by 1,000 paper cuts method, which is taking a lot of the short dink and dunk game, running the football. And I think that Seattle game on Monday night a couple weeks ago was a big wake-up call for CJ in terms of holding the ball, taking the profit when it's available to him. He was a completely different guy on Sunday against San Francisco. No question. That's a big reason why he's looked better of late.
Sean Pendergast, my guest from Sports Radio 610 in Houston. You mentioned earlier a little bit of injury luck in terms of Houston going up against a team that's a little bit shorthanded. Obviously, here the Broncos are missing overall health-wise pretty good, but they don't have Pat Surtain. How would you expect the Houston Texans to attack the Denver Broncos now that the reigning Defensive Player of the Year is unavailable?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, from the Broncos side, how they adapt to that, because obviously a lot of what the Broncos are able to do in their pass rush is predicated on having Surtain out there. You know, the luxury, I think the Texans kind of know how this feels with Derek Stingley Jr.
Mm-hmm.
The luxury that you have when you have a cornerback, when you go, all right, well, that side of the field, we're good over there. It changes a lot of what you do. Nico Collins missed last week's game against the 49ers with a concussion. Christian Kirk missed that game with a hamstring injury. Those are their top two veteran wide receivers. And Nico Collins, when he's healthy and the offense is going, is one of the 10 best receivers in football. They'll both be back for the game on Sunday. So I would imagine that I don't know that they're going to just force feed Nico Collins because they seem to have stumbled upon some things in that Niners game just out of necessity because they were down to their third, fourth, and fifth receivers. So I think there's still going to be an element of spreading the ball around, but if you got Nico Collins on your fantasy team, I would imagine this has the potential to be a pretty good week.
Sean Pendergast, my guest, what have you been discussing as maybe a concern when the Broncos offense is on the field for the Texans?
Well, one, they are really good at protecting Bo Nix, and the Texans have the defense. Both these defenses are elite defenses. The Texans are first in scoring defense and first in yardage defense right now. So they're playing at a very high level. But the one thing that they're not doing is sacking the quarterback. And so they managed to be a very stout defense without, getting the opponent in really bad down and distance situations by sacking the quarterback. I think that would be the concern, is that the Texans haven't really sacked quarterbacks. The Broncos are the best at protecting Bo Nix. And I would say the other thing to me, Broncos pretty good running game. The thing that always concerns me with these quarterbacks who have the ability to do things with their legs is discipline in the pass rush. And in a couple of the games where the Texans lost, in particular that Tampa Bay game against Baker Mayfield and the Jags game in week 3, where Trevor Lawrence, I don't think is a very good quarterback, but he is fairly athletic. And if you let him out of the pocket, he can go get you 10 or 12 yards. Well, Bo Nix fits that category too. And so I think I said today on our show here in Houston that if there were one thing, if I was looking at the box score after the game, if Bo Nix has one of those games that, not a Lamar Jackson level running quarterback, but a quarterback that's able to hurt you with his legs. If Bo Nix has 6 carries for 51 yards or something like that, where he's scrambled and he's moving the chains with his legs, because the Texans are great on the back end. They're great between Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, and then their safety play and Jalen Petrie, who's sort of a wild card. If they get things locked up on the back end, but the front end, the defensive line, lets Bo Nix leak out, he's going to hurt you. Those are the things that concern me, is the protection for Bo Nix and then his ability to beat you with his athleticism.
How do you like Bo Nix is a weird way to put it, but from what you've seen from Bo Nix from afar, I mean, do you think that the Broncos have a franchise quarterback?
When they drafted him, I thought they really overdrafted. He was he's a sixth. He was a sixth guy out of the 6-man first round class, and it was the 12th pick. I didn't think he was worth the 12th overall pick in the draft when they took him, but I think he's obviously done some good things now. It's such a tricky thing, these young quarterbacks and we're dealing with this with C.J. Stroud to an extent. Right. And I feel like we found our guy in C.J. Stroud, but 4 weeks ago when they were 0-3, that was a huge topic. Are we going to give him $60 million a year? So this stuff can change so quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I lean towards yes, with the caveat that it's a pretty smart league defensively, and they tend to catch up to certain things. The good news for Bo Nix is he's got a great coach in Sean Payton. He could not do much better in terms of the guy who's pushing the buttons for him. That's been the challenge for CJ Stroud, is that, there's been a little lack of consistency in who's calling plays and the offense that they've played in. if I had to flip, if I had to place a bet on Bo Nix, I would say yes on Bo Nix.
Well, the battle of wits between D'Amico Ryans and Sean Payton will be something to watch on
great.
on
Great.
yeah, on Sunday, and a lot of other storylines as well as the Broncos try to give it a go without Pat Surtain Sunday in Houston. Sean Pendergast, outstanding host on Payne and Pendergast in the mornings down on Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Really appreciate it. And enjoy scaring the youths of the state of Texas tonight, Sean.
always. And you enjoy the game on Sunday, my brother.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
you too. Thanks. That's Sean Pendergast, outstanding host. Yeah, you've heard him through the years, host for Infinity Sports Network when it was CBS, and fan of his. Yeah, D'Amico Ryans going against Sean Payton. It's so funny too, the difference. I get all these people who cover the Broncos opponent on a given week, and it's always Bo Nix's running ability. That's always the thing that they're most concerned with. And then what are we talking about here? Sean Payton doesn't let Bo Nix run. It's like, sometimes I always like to kind of hear the quote unquote opposing viewpoint. That's why I have Sean. And when Donovan Lewis joined me before the Dallas game, I like to hear these opposing viewpoints. And when I listen to games, whether it's the Nuggets, the Avalanche, Broncos, whatever, I like to listen to the opposing broadcast to kind of get that unfiltered, unbiased take where they don't care whether the Broncos, they actually don't want the Broncos to win that particular game, but they can kind of have an unfiltered take. You never know sometimes, with the home broadcast. And look, I'm a home broadcaster. I get what the gig is, but that's why I listen to the opposing team's broadcast. And everyone's like, don't want Bo Nix to run. Don't want him to run. Is there something there that everybody I bring on that covers the opponent that week for the Denver Broncos says, man, we hope Bo Nix doesn't run? And we're sitting here pleading with Sean Payton, let Bo Nix run more. We'll see if he does on Sunday. I think he's going to have to. Right? It just out of necessity. I'm not saying that Sean Payton is going to be designing a lot of quarterback runs, but I can't imagine that Houston's not going to be able to create pressure against Bo Nix. But at the same time, I don't think every pressure that Houston creates is going to keep Bo Nix confined in the pocket. There are going to be opportunities for him to leak out, for him to get out and use his legs. And we'll see if he does that on Sunday against the Houston Texans. But you heard Sean Pendergast from a fantasy perspective. You got Nico Collins, especially if it's a PPR league that you're in. Might be a good play this week coming off of injury. And Christian Kirk, by the way. So Houston's getting healthier. Denver's getting less healthy. I've been saying it all week. This is an interesting game. It's a really interesting game. And I think it's a coin flip. I really do. That's Sunday morning at 11. 719-247-1313. Avs and Golden Knights got a little bit tighter. Let you know in a little bit how that's going. But in the meantime, our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week joins me next on Extra Sports 1300.
sir.
Yep. That is Colton Kamba, our Extra Sports 1300 Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Good quarterback, even better student and kid. And good luck to the Wolves tonight as they take on Durango in their season finale. If you would like to nominate a deserving athlete that maybe will be included in next week's voting, go to extrasports1300.com and fill out our nomination form, and we'll have new nominees for you next week to vote on. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Pivoting here, it has gone final in Vegas, and the Avs defeat the Golden Knights 4-2, and things got a little bit dicey there in the third period, but you've seen this the last two games for the Avalanche, and you didn't see it for the entire week before, right? What did I point out at the end of that really difficult week? Avs keep falling behind. They kept falling behind. They conceded the first goal and the second goal, and they constantly had to dig out of that hole that they found themselves in. Well, what's been the biggest difference the last two games? They started with the lead. Sometimes it's just that simple. You make a team chase you, and even when Vegas comes back at the Avs like they did, I mentioned earlier the Thomas Hertl goal at the time made it 2-1. Right? Avs were up 2-0. Hertl scores on the power play. And it's like, okay, now we got a game here. But what did the Avs come back and do? Regrouped. Brent Burns, who's now talking with Kyle Keefe on altitude, scoring his first goal as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Made it 3-1. Vegas still didn't go away. Mitch Marner scored to make it 3-2. And then with the goalie pulled, Cale Makar seals it with an empty netter, giving the Avs the 4-2 win. It's just been, they've started with the lead. This is a team that, if I use the word front running, it's almost, taking something away from them. But when they get a lead, they're so difficult to beat. Because even if they kind of sit back a little bit, and that's not really their style, I just mean more like, okay, our job is done. If they let up mentally and you get them for a goal, they can lock back in like they did today and answer right back. Getting the lead, it's like with this Avs team, getting the lead, good luck trying to beat them. And then if they fall behind early, you still don't close the door on the Avs coming back and winning a game. That's how good this team is and how dangerous they are offensively. And who is it leading the way today? The top, I'll say the top five, the starting five, if you will, because Cale Makar played a big role in this game today. But the guy who had a hand in 3 of the 4 goals today for the Colorado Avalanche, their new $96 million man. First game after getting paid. Expectations go up. Now you are in the Mikko Rantanen conversation, not just that you were traded for the guy, but now you're getting paid like a Mikko Rantanen gets paid. Only $500K less a year starting next year. And what does Marty Necas do? Scores the first goal of the game to give the Avs that all too important lead and assists on 2 more of them today. And for Necas now, we are up to 8 goals and 8 assists in 12 games. Marty Necas is playing at at better than a point per game clip. If you in the NHL or in hockey in general, if you're a point per game player, you're a good player. Point per game players are good players. Marty Necas has 16 points in 12 games. And the fit just continues to show it's hand in glove. Marty Necas fits in with the Avalanche perfectly. And yes, playing with the arguably the best player in the world, it helps. It helps. But we weren't diminishing who Mikko Rantanen was. Well, some people were once he left and saying, well, without Nathan MacKinnon, who are you going to be? Well, he answered that in the playoffs, didn't he? But we can't fall into the trap of just because you play with a great player, you yourself are suddenly not good. Putting Marty Necas in this lineup with the Colorado Avalanche on that top line has just enhanced what was already there. And he is on a ridiculous pace. I told you after the opening night, you can book it. Two things that you can absolutely count on. Cale Makar is going to be one of the finalists for the Norris Trophy, and Marty Necas is going to have his first 30-goal season. He has 8 in 12 games. And there was an interesting quote by Marty Necas yesterday when he was meeting with the media after signing that huge extension. He kept bringing up the belief. And I don't know if it was a veiled shot at Carolina. I guess every athlete did Mikko Rantanen feel this way? The way he played against the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs last year sure felt like he was felt slighted. So athletes do this, right? How in the world could you not want to pay me all the money? And that's the athlete mentality. It's why they've been so successful, is they have the utmost confidence in who they are. So I would imagine that the Hurricanes' willingness to move on from him and that contract negotiation, I don't know that it got messy, but the more and more I hear about it and read about it, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I'll say that between the two teams. But he kept talking about how the Avalanche believe in him, the belief that they're putting in him. And my goodness, did he reciprocate in a huge way today with a goal and 2 assists in a showcase game. There aren't many of these on the Avs schedule. They only get so many games to take on the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, Edmonton, and depending on what version of Connor Hellebuck you get, that's the list. These are the contenders in the Western Conference. And I wouldn't take many teams from the East and put over those teams. I think unless Florida makes a big move, which they've been known to do, so I don't put it past them, but unless they make a significant move or they can get Barkov back before the playoffs, I think the Stanley Cup winner is coming out of the West. And Vegas and Colorado are two of those options. And so for the Avs to play an afternoon game on the road, I know the flight from Denver to Vegas is nothing. I'm just saying, it's away from your building. That can be a very hostile environment. Really good team led by a guy that's putting together an early Hart Trophy campaign in Jack Eichel, and you control that game. The Avs controlled it today. Yeah, Vegas popped up a couple of times, made it a little bit nervy, but the Avs had that thing the whole way. Marty Necas with the goal in the first period. They built up a 2-goal lead even when Vegas came back at him. Brent Burns answered right back. It's impressive performance today by the Colorado Avalanche. Still with Scott Wedgwood in goal, mind you. So the Avs get that done. Later tonight, it will be the Nuggets taking on the Portland Trailblazers. And here on Extra Sports 1300, you could hear Air Force Hockey open up a 2-game set against Brown. I'll be on the call with Jay Ritchie for that one. And in fact, I got to go. So our time was short. Hopefully it was worth it for you. My thanks to Sean Pendergast for joining me from Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Colton Kamba, our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week from Vista Ridge. You'll be able to hear both of those interviews if you missed it coming up next. And I will talk to you at about 6:30 right here on Extra Sports 1300.